Hi, everybody. Welcome to Gig, where we explore jobs in the film and music industry. I have candid conversations with film and music people about what they do, the good and the bad, as well as sharing tips about how you can get your foot in the door and what you really need to know to be successful. Today, my guest is Mike Ladman. He's an unusual character in the music world. He works out every day, eats healthy, and lives to inspire others and introduce them to great music. He does all of this while working as a music supervisor at Droga5, arguably one of the most creative ad agencies in the world. I made my living, and a very good one at that, writing music for ads, primarily Disney and Universal. It was a perfect fit. As a composer, I loved working within that 30 and 60 second time frame. Besides film and TV, ads are a wonderful place to stretch your creative muscle and have financial success. So take a listen. I promise you'll be inspired and more informed.
Hello.
How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm awesome. What's that out your window I see? Oh, what floor are you on?
I'm 32nd floor downtown in Fida. First time ever being in like a nice doorman building and first time ever being high up. I never wanted either of those. I am a fan of all the things except for there's a big staff, so it gets quite expensive for tipping here. That was new to me. But all good. Totally.
How long have you been there?
I moved in end of May, so it's still still kind of fresh.
So you got the Christmas gifts for the doorman and elevator man and the trash man and the mailman.
There's 21 of them.
So you've been really, really busy, man. Thanks for taking some time to catch up. It sounds like it's a pretty crazy time of the year for you, huh?
I got to be honest. It was actually, I had probably there's two parts. I had an intern and I hired her. So it's the first time I've had staff help since being a one-man show, really. Since I've been at Droga for 6 years. So 5 years essentially of just being a one-man show.
Wow.
So that makes it feel less. And then I think just, recession marketing, things have just been a little bit different. And you're always doing interesting things and promoting the crazy microcosm of the music industry that we're in.
You've been in the ad business, I can't believe it, like 14 years, something like that, Ed. Tell me what it is that you love about this business, because I believe that most people that think about music and stuff, advertising, they look at it, and it's not that they look down on it, they just simply don't understand that there's a whole music business built around advertising.
Yeah, it's interesting for sure how it's evolved during all that time. When I started, most people, I think from my era and before, everyone fell into this little world of it's both music and advertising and just being aware of music supervision and the marriage of music and TV, film, and ads. So really, I think there's been sort of a renaissance or an awareness and appreciation for the partnership of music paired with film across kind of any mediums. So for me in advertising, I grew up playing in bands. I worked at an indie record store in college. And once I realized I wasn't going to be a famous rock star, at least the band broke up and I started working at the record store in college, I stumbled into it. And I think most people stumbled into it. My stepsister is in advertising and told me about it. And I applied to be a copywriter at McCann Erickson in college. And they pretty quickly saw that I did not have the resume for that job. I had one English class. That was it. I had no portfolio. I just wrote a script because my stepsister told me that was a way to sort of build that. But they saw my email was jhendricks@udel. I worked at a record store. I played guitar and all that. And why don't you try this thing? And then it was sort of, it was a cool sort of love at first sight, where after working in the record store, I amassed this encyclopedic music knowledge that I finally had a productive outlet for. And it was also interesting because this is going to maybe go quite niche, but I was on campus with, high speed internet when that really mattered, and was a part of this. It was not, necessarily the most legal site, but it was oink.fm, which was Oink. I had an Oink account. And because I was on campus, Oink was a sort of kind of in a way functioned like Spotify way before Spotify. This is like 2000, 2006, 7 probably. But I'm sure a lot of people don't know what Oink is, or these torrent sites. But this was the first one where when there was albums being leaked and everything, they would all get uploaded to this site, Oink First, which was invite only, highly curated. You had to have a ratio of uploads and downloads. And there was a community there. Because I was on campus, you couldn't be a leech. So you had to upload the same as you downloaded. But because I was on campus with this, I left my computer up. So I essentially could just download unlimited music all day.
Oh, cool. Oh, nice.
So then I could then take that and bring my, big iPod into the record store. And we just had basically, untapped music resource. And that, I think, is what helped me build this music knowledge, because I could just listen to everything I wanted all the time, which we take for granted now, but wasn't available. So I could go into this job and just pull tracks from everywhere and high quality MP3s. Anyways, long-winded way of saying, I've always loved sharing music with people, whether it's a friend in high school, the record stores with strangers. And I think once I found this, or started to pair music with picture in the form of ads, it was a way to share music with the world. And that became exciting. Now I have a playlist I update weekly and share new music. So that's kind of just been something that has always been exciting to me. And I think gets mirrored back with people also find that exciting of it's so hard to find new music. But if paired with the right setting, it opens people's eyes. And the more good music in the world is consumed, the more good music that'll be created.
But let me ask you something. You're the senior music supervisor at Droga5. You guys, I've talked to a fair number of people. It's kind of, you guys are thought of as pretty much one of the premier creative agencies in the world. And because of that, it's a real marriage of music. I mean, all of the work that I've seen that you've done, music plays a really important role. And, typically in lots of businesses, music's the afterthought, or, gee, can you find a needle drop for this or whatever. The other thing that I notice is that you guys work on these campaigns that kind of like cross media. They're not, you don't just work in the 30/60 world. Could you talk a little bit about that? Because I think that sets you guys, it really differentiates what you do.
Yeah. I always say I got drafted to the Yankees because when I joined Droga, they were buzzy and still are, known most years, and they'll win best agency of the year. They've known that, and now been known to be that and do the work that I think merits that. And I'm lucky to be a part of those teams. And I think for me in the music part, it comes in two waves that I think sets us apart. There's that precedent set that if you're going to come to Droga, it's very much known as being a hardworking agency and doing the best work. So they get people, it kind of cultivates that kind of talent. And I think a lot of that ethos is we don't make ads, we make films, we make content that participate within culture. We don't want to be intrusive. And so to do that in the most authentic way, we work with not just ad directors, but a lot of real directors, everything from FK Twig, Derek Cianfrance, Martin Datura, Daniel Wolf. We work with these people who do that. And so I think you get a film quality that's different, that lends itself to storytelling. We never call them ads, we call them films. And for music, I think the creatives, we feel the most authentic way to do it is to not have a scripted thing saying it, but can we find a song that can tell this story, and to not be so literal, say, where it feels so formulaic. It doesn't feel like it's going to connect. So the perfect song, like if there's a song that can have the exact lyrics of our story, the exact tone and everything, because it's sort of, a sync song, you might say, these camps where people make the, specifically for it, because certain things can work. We always try to do the unexpected thing. What's the warmth? And I think, we were just talking about records and vinyl. We look for a lot of human qualities within the music. So I think they write a lot of scripts with space for lyrics. I'm doing a whole campaign now for a brand for Grammys, and there's no voiceover. It's just music, because I think there's the belief.
Nice. Oh man, that must be fun.
It's fun. They're also it's those briefs and films you dream of, like you want, and then you're in there and you're like, it's nuts. We're already on it'll be like round 11 on this one thing. So it's how many tracks into pictures. So I think the best spots typically have the biggest war stories, because they care about every part of it and they want to make sure everything is perfect, as opposed to just, oh, here's a track that works, cool, let's move on, we have VO, it doesn't matter. I think most people's favorite spots are music forward because everyone loves music. So
tell me a war story.
I'm in a spot now. I've had a spot. It could be either creatively or it could be licensing and negotiations. So for example, there's a spot that we did now. There's another one in Africa we've done 2 spots that are African based for Meta. And this spot now is currently from a time in a region that is notoriously difficult to license because of handshake deals and all that. So if you find something in both this one and one of those spots was very region specific. So there wasn't the most diverse music from there. It was a little bit more limited. There was and that was kind of the beauty of those areas where those sounds, we need some things that were a bit more dynamic and okay, here's those music with that sound from that place. Here's some songs and places from other genre, maybe broke that genre and stereotype a bit. So you'd find one that would break that, which would be hard to do, find it creatively. And then stuff from the 60s, 70s, and these other places around the world, there isn't paperwork. So you'd solve it creatively after a couple of weeks, and then you go to license it, and it could be, I was killing songs left and right. Finding it was hard. Then we find a song and we'd realize, okay, there's no paperwork on it. So it could even be where you can go on Discogs, you can go and research, okay, X major label has this. And I would send it and we have no record. I'm like, well, here you do. Here's pictures of the record and all that. Yeah. Well, that's in the Africa office or whatever it might be. We have no paperwork on this. So we're not going to come after you, but we can't also put out paperwork. So there's that. Or with these kind of handshake deals and a lot of reissue labels, you'll have someone who will go to one of these kind of remote countries, dig up some gems, find whoever put it out, and then they'll reissue it, and they'll give X amount, you're in your 70s now, an album that did nothing in your teens. Here's some guy who says, hey, I'm going to give you 20 grand, 100 grand, whatever it might be for this. They're like, yep. Maybe 3 years later, another guy comes and does the same thing. And you're like, yeah, sure. So then you might have 400% accounted for on an album, which is unlicensable. So essentially versus, to license anything, you need 100% of master and publishing to do it. In these cases, we would have 300, 400%. So too many people claiming ownership of it and it was unlicensable. Or just now there was one where it's it's a clear twice. I assumed it was a sample or an interpolation or cover. And no, there was no accounting for that. So the song is literally in a lawsuit as of last week. There was a different one where I was I had 2 partners, trusted great ones, who are great friends and, the best and the best. And I was like, this sounds like a sample. And well, we have no paperwork of there being any samples. This is a sample. Well, we have 100% each one. And well, here, listen to this. They didn't even pitch it up or do anything. And oh no. So we had a week, not even we had to have them go and clear the sample, which takes time. And then when they were finally in the process, the artist said, you have to use our master. And at this point, we had just shipped the spot. And so that was also a day where I was signing a lease and moving in. And I had to tell everyone, hey, the band said this. So we had to figure out all these. My plan was, luckily our friends, because they are reputable and friends, they stepped up and kind of were able to talk some sense into the band, because once a spot ships, the cost to go back, mix, do all this, it was too late. It would cost millions for the client and we wouldn't hit deadlines. And I had to get creative to account for how that would have worked. And you just, until it's on air, I never believe it's real.
Yeah, that's funny how you just recounted 3 different stories really quickly, which I know are just off the top of your head. This is kind of a regular occurrence in your job, isn't it?
Yeah. And I guess I didn't even talk about, the creative or stories of, for example, sometimes you can get a film and they'll reference something else we might have done that was very successful, whether it was Michael Phelps, which often gets accredited to me. I wish I could take credit for it. That happened before I joined Droga. That was our amazing creatives, Tim and Toby and everyone else who worked on that. But that was when I was just so excited, where I was they do films differently and music as well. But for example, it's a gauntlet of approvals creatively. So, I might have 3 layers of internal approvals. I just remember, and it could be around the world. So now if you have people from internally and externally around the world, there's different tastes, there's different body of knowledge of some people in the UK is like, everyone knows this song. It's a smash. It's a banger.
Right.
And then we're like, no, it wasn't. Not over here. And so you have to get, you know, and the other way around, like no one knows. It's like, well, here, this is ubiquitous. Everyone knows this thing. So you then have to get a track that everyone will approve internally and externally. And to do it in a way where it honors the film and it honors what I think we would call, you know, a good song, not just the right one, and not just what a client's nephew might think is cool.
Speaking of the clients, I mean, do you have a pretty good staff that once you internally kind of decided on the creative and you've got a track and, you know, you've got the director and everything and it's all coming together, and do you have some help above you to sell that music when required, because it needs it a lot of times?
Yeah, I think that's also what's so, you know, a lot of the success of Droga is the team efforts within. So I think with agencies, it can be, there can be a very big difference in terms of account and creative could be just butting heads all the time. Of account can be, you know, maybe a little bit more yes men for client, or you can have places like Droga where they're willing to partner with creative, share the client's perspective, and then figure out how to tweak the creative to sell through to client. And it's also interesting when you're on these calls that are awkward, where you creatives and account and we're all on there kind of saying, no, we can't do that. You know, the same way you might have an artist say, no, I can't do that. It's not our value. You know, they'll really push and fight for that. So I think, you know, I can be on calls and just seeing a guitar and a speaker in the background and knowing I'm a music guy, I think sometimes they can listen a bit more. And so having all of us on a call and explaining this thing that seems so subjective, which it is, really helps us sell that through. So it is a team. So it's like my clients are my creatives. If they don't like it, it's not going to go to client. And so I only want to pitch. Yeah. And I actually remember, like, I only pitch stuff that I love, because I never want something to go out and be like, oh, I hate this. You know, every now and then client does, when you kind of do have to cave a bit, but pick your battles for which song, which moment, which is the piece of the creative that is the most paramount. Sometimes, like, take a hit on music because something else is more important, and that's, you know, to flip flop the other way. But yeah, I've actually the past couple of years just read a lot about negotiation and influence, just to figure out how to talk to clients, how to talk to creatives. And yeah, a lot of it is empathetic listening and all of that, but it's been helpful to use those tactics, not tactics, but it's just good ways of communication.
That's the difference between you're a music guy, I'm a music guy, and I have friends that are these incredible salespeople. They're totally sincere, but I could walk into the same meeting and walk out, you know, not having gotten across the finish line, and they walk out shaking hands, you know, on their way to have a beer, you know, because it's just, it's skill. There's a great guy, and I can't think of his name right now, but I'll text it to you when we're done. You may know who it is. He's on that show. What's it called?
Masterclass.
Yeah, Masterclass.
Chris Voss.
Chris Voss. Yeah.
I read that book like probably once every year or two. I think
I have the audio version, and whenever I take a long trip, I re-listen.
Yeah. I do Audible. So when I say read, it's Audible. Yeah.
Is orange your favorite color?
Orange?
Yeah.
No.
You didn't just buy 2 pairs of orange sneakers?
Well, one is orange. They're the Nike Lobsters.
Oh.
And one is actually more of a pinkish thing, the DJ Khaled's the Lobsters.
Okay.
Yeah.
On my computer, they both looked orange.
That's what someone else said too. Yeah.
But was there a project along the way when you got started, maybe with Droga5, when you finished the project and went, damn, I'm actually pretty good at this?
Yeah, it's fun. I don't think that ever really goes away. It's like I equate it to I think that was like I don't know, like 35. So like that was like probably like a late 20s, early 30s, where there's that moment of no one knows anything. And I think there's some comfort in that. Meaning Beyonce, when she played Super Bowl, it's like, oh, of course Beyonce did the Super Bowl. Of course. Yeah. She'd never done a Super Bowl before. And it just seemed like that with like the confidence and like the prep before, but I'm sure she was nervous. So I think there's a part of that maybe doesn't always go, or once, I don't know, for me, there was comfort in that. And that can go also, the realization started with parents of like, well, they were just me when they were doing this and they didn't know. And you just do it. I'll say recently, the yeah, I guess there would be recently actually that happened where we did a chase spot that had Anderson .Paak in it. And he was featured in the spot and as a little cameo playing the drums. And we then had to score it. And we're like, well, how do we incorporate it? It's weird to have him and not have his music on there. But in terms of, paper, all the things, we didn't know if we'd be able to get him to score the spot, which made the most sense, or license something. So it took a minute to figure that out. Client was great and we were able to be able to make that happen. But this all happened maybe like Monday. Oh, we think he's going to do it. We knew he wanted to, and he was great. And got him to. Tuesday, we had a call with him. He was great. And he's like, cool, we're booked for a studio tomorrow, Wednesday in LA. We're like, whoa, we were trying to delay. And anyway, so that call happened at like 4:30, 5:00. We booked flights. We were out in LA the next day at noon. And then we're going to Conway Studios to record him that night. And I'd say in pandemic, I was Zooming with artists all the time. I had so many people write for us. It was amazing, really cool. And we've worked with artists a lot and had them demo even before. This, we were going to be going into the room with him and giving him live feedback and notes on the spot. And it was pretty cool because I remember one of my favorite licenses was I put his song Am I Wrong in a Google Pixel spot before he totally blown up. That was like one of the big licenses, probably a year or two before the big FK Twigs Apple Sync, which as a spot, I probably like that more, but in terms of getting there first, whatever. So it's cool to come full circle and now be doing this thing. But I remember sitting in my hotel room where now it's going to be the client. This is an A-lister. I've done it more with indie artists. He was in the Grammys. He's at Super Bowl. He's chilling with Bruno. He is A-lister. Going to the studio with an artist of this level, with client and creative, everyone looking at me, they were like, well, Ladman has to go first to produce this. There was very tight how many people could be in the room. And like, okay, go do your thing.
Go do that thing you do, yeah.
Go do that. And I remember actually sitting in the hotel before going. And like, I'm a big meditator and all, health and wellness and all that. And just sitting and meditating because I had that like, oh man, I've never really quite done this. I've worked with talent and different levels and different ways, but not quite in this way. I remember sitting and meditating and going through, we've been doing this, 13 and a half years. And other artists I had, I had a project that never went live, but I did get to work with Johnny Greenwood on something, which was a career highlight. And it's sort of like Seinfeld. Everything's compared to the moon once you go to the moon. If you didn't go to the moon, and for me, it's like, if I can hold a conversation, work with Johnny Greenwood, email and do that, then I can do Anderson .Paak. This is just what I do. But I had to have that mental chat. And I went in the room and I had that prep talk, and then I did it, and I did come back, and that was like that, and officiating my friend's wedding were 2 times like kind of killed that. I felt like confident from the experience and practice, and like he gave us a track, and then we're like, all right, here, try to do this and that, and like you go tell him what to do, and it was rad. And it's also, I was lucky because he was great. He took all the notes, and the next version is what went final.
Man, that makes all the difference, doesn't it?
But yeah.
Okay, you spent a lot of time in record stores. You have your playlist. Somebody comes to you with a spot and says, "Here's our demographic: 13 to 15-year-old girls."
Yeah.
How do you, with all the music you listen to, with all the production you do, all the licensing, how do you stay on top of what a 15-year-old girl might like?
Interesting. My answer to that is probably will be evolving for that. I remember starting at Droga, actually. And there was projects where that was sort of the brief. We want to hit these, females in this demographic and here and there. And we would pitch songs specifically for that, even though it's maybe music that we didn't really love. It like hit this demographic in the brief, but it wasn't necessarily a track or music that we really liked or we thought elevated the film. And then there'd be that brief, and then creatives would be sending us these old soul songs, and we were very confused. This was like within the first month or two. And then we kind of learned that, and I think it holds true, is that it's the best song for the film, I think, will have the greatest impact. So whether it's going to be whatever TikTok star or whatever, there's, the equity you get of, oh, they'll know this thing. But I think, Stranger Things, anything, it's the right song paired. It is what will connect, the perfect placement, whatever that might be. And I think for me, I've sort of that's all leading to, we're always looking for the feels, is what it's called. That song that gives you goosebumps, the song that stops you in your track and it's just ingrained in your memory. And so for me, I've sort of over the years kind of evolved what I think, how to arrive at this mythical place. And the first thing is like, is it a good song? Meaning, do you want to hear this song out of context? Which is where I think songs that can be made just for sync can fall short of, like, it does what you want, but maybe it's just kind of stale. It feels too forced and produced. So is the song great? Do you just want to hear this thing without picture? The second is like, is it elevating your story? Whether that's through lyrics or an instrumental can do that well by telling the story through, emotions and musically. And the third is to do that in an unexpected way. So if you have a great blues song that's, hard hitting and it has the lyrics and the changes you need to accent your picture, but it's on a beer ad, we've seen that 1,000 times. So it's just kind of fall short. So it's like, how can you do that in another way? I kind of call it like the jelly bean burger. Give me a burger. I want the flavor of a burger. I want that. I want to taste that. But like, here's a crazy mix of jelly beans. Like, here's swagger, but it's actually an old country song or something. How else can you deliver that emotion in an unexpected way? And so I think that's how you get to the feels. Like, how do you do that? And so to connect to them, I actually think they're more open to other genres than just one thing than anyone else, because they have Spotify. I think when we went growing up, it was like you had your punk rock kids, your hip hop kids. We're segregated by music. If you ask anyone dating in New York, what do you listen to? Like, everyone's answer is now everything. No one wants to be pigeonholed by music. And the fact that kids are wearing Metallica shirts and actually starting to know what that is and thinking, or Fleetwood Mac, I think there certainly are genres that hit that more, but I think they're more open to whatever a great song, whatever is new. And TikTok is the perfect example, because King Khan and the Shrines, Duster, these artists that are blowing up, you can't predict, and they're not of any one thing. So that was also the kind of genesis of my playlist. Was I think people don't know what to listen to because it's so oversaturated and paralysis by choice. So I think people are open to hearing African disco and Brazilian funk. They just don't know where to find it,
or they didn't know it ever existed. They didn't know it existed. Yeah,
they don't even know it existed. But if you give them some songs, and everyone shuffles it, but it's made to be listened to in order, just for that flow. So that, okay, here's a normal song, and then we get into like Japanese yacht rock and back, and you can kind of have it do that. But I think people are more open to new music and new things now more than ever.
That's cool. That is really cool.
Or sometimes, here's an artist, you got to do a thing, they hit this, that happens. But I think it goes back to the right song with the right film. Agnostic of any demographic like that will have the greatest
That's
success.
Cool. That's a really great answer, and one that I think is sort of unexpected, especially given how it's always been delivered and asked for when I was doing ad music. It's like, we need something, here's our demographic, and you needed to fit within that. Now, sort of one of the things I hear you saying is that younger people, they grew up with their parents' music, and then they've got all this new music, and then they've got all of these social platforms that are giving them other exposure. So I don't need to expose myself to, I'm not going to say I'm Catholic or Jewish or Presbyterian. I'm just, I'm spiritual.
Right. Yeah. I think for artist partnerships, that could be different, but for strictly here's a song and here's a film, I don't think it matters, quite as much. But like for an artist partnership, I think then, if you want an artist to engage or do content or something.
Do you get approached by artists that want to do music for you guys?
All the time. That's also why the pandemic, fun is the wrong word, but because there were no tours, all the artists were home, around, and down to do it. Like, you'd kind of always hear artists were for it, but they're on tour, they're doing this or that.
Right.
One was home, and also revenue streams in other places were gone. So I think ads and brands are, in many ways, can float a lot of artists and support a lot of that. So I think artists like it, financially, we did an artist deal, and, it was like $100,000 for a big buzzy indie artist. And things were getting a little complicated, and we thought they might not walk. Anyway, we talked to the manager, And he's like, no, we want this to happen. Because it started to seem like they didn't want to after they did the work. We're all ready to go and license, and things started getting strange. And it was like, what's going on here? And he was very much like, no, we want this to happen because $100,000 is the equivalent of selling 60,000 records, like vinyl, like physical copies. And that's, most people don't do that.
It's meaningful.
So it's meaningful. So they want that financially, of course, because then that can fund an album, big or small artist. And a big artist, it helps do their tours, and smaller, just whatever you need. And then the other side is creatively, to create something for the sake of creation, because there's something inside you have to get out. There's something you have to say. There's this thing, that draws people to music. It's really tough. So now this is the first time where you can create with purpose for something. Here's a film, here's a message. They really like that. It changes the creative process. And it's a fun problem solve for how do I fit that into 30 seconds. So I think they really enjoy the challenge and a different way of flexing that creative muscle.
How did you learn about music licensing? I mean, people don't understand you can correct me if I'm wrong, but about half of what you do is creating music, finding music, whatever. The other's administrative. And that's keeping track of, this, making sure that you're cleared, you're protecting your brand, your client, your agency, yourself. So how did you learn?
It's funny. It's one of those things where I would actually say that I think that music supervision, so I was saying, most people that my level and prior all stumbled into this. Now there's every semester, there's music supervision courses because of how much music is used in film and TV is usually what draws people in. There are the people who they start there and they start to work on it and work towards ads, and the budgets, the reach, and the kind of nutty timelines become kind of addicting in a way.
Yeah.
But they're cranking out so many students where there's not enough to almost support the thing. We all fell into it. And so now I've guest speak in a lot of different colleges and places, and it's taught like any class. For me, I learned that on the job. And unfortunately, the truth is that the sexy part of the job, the just digging around and crate digging and listening, is a huge part, and the pitching and editing to picture, but it's probably only like a third. So much of the job is talking about music, which is, 70% is being a translator because people don't have the words for it. There's, that infamous quote, talking about music is like tap dancing about architecture. Everyone has an opinion on it, but don't know how to say, hey, this is too fast, too green, it's energy, it's too whatever. And so knowing how to internalize that and spit it out, and then do that with your own perspective of something that they might not have thought of. I learned on the job. It's confusing. It's because it's really hard and confusing and ever changing, and there's so many rules. I'm glad it's hard. That's why I have a job, because anyone can put together a playlist on Spotify, to some degree, but then to know what songs, what artists are willing to license, what won't. Now most are. That was not the case a while ago. And it's always like we presented decks of here's how to do it. Here's what master publishing, master this, here's SAG, FM, unions. And it's like, okay, here's what it is. But then almost every time there's something that breaks because of an artist or a contract or something. So that is a huge part of the job. So I think the job of the music supervisor is not just pitching music and finding music. That is like the DNA. You need that to walk through the door. That's your ID. It needs to be there to gain access. But then so much is, I think it's really to make sure the best song makes it to air safely. And so the best song means, I think, putting ego aside, knowing that Droga, these directors, these creatives have great taste. So they find songs too. And I have to make sure it goes out clearly and safely and at a good cost. And so that's where I said those war stories can often be in that paperwork, and educating, doing it up front so you're not in the final hour on the back foot, although that will just happen.
It's interesting, Mike, talking to you. And I have like one last thing I want to ask you. But before that, I want to tell you that it's really energizing for me to listen to you, because you're able to articulate your love of music and also how you've integrated it into your job. Into a job that most people, and honestly, I was in the ad business for a long time, most people would go the route of, find a piece of music because it's going to be under the VO anyway. It's kind of like insignificant, but we know we need it. you've found this job where you get the respect for what you've worked so hard for, which is awesome. I mean, that's really cool. And I don't know, I think we could probably talk all day, but I'm gonna end with this question today.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
I can't articulate how impressed I am with how well you speak about music, and I can just see the love. So the one question is, and it could be a sentence, it could be a run-on sentence, but talk about, if I was to want to be in that business, if I was to want to head in your direction, what would you say is a good way to start and maybe get my foot in the door doing it?
Let me try and figure this out in a brief way. But A is, I would say, start doing it. You can, and so that sounds easy and simple. So what I mean by that is start making playlists now. Take note of what you like. So if you want to do TV and film, find shows you like. If you want to do ads, find the ads you like, and start to pay attention to the music used within that. When you do that, I think you'll start to notice certain trends. For ads, it's about being yourself, coming together, want that, need that. There's certain themes that come up. Start making playlists for each of those themes. Film and TV, which I haven't done much of. I did one film. I think hero stories. So what are those? Love, breakup, loss. There's certain things. Start cataloging great songs. Make a playlist for that. Anytime you hear a song and a visual pops up in your head, this would be like a slow-mo Tarantino thing. This is a Wes Anderson. This is good for that scene. That's a playlist right there. A playlist can have one song or eventually thousands of songs. Because when you're given a brief or film, it's like when I go into a record store, it's instant amnesia. I'm like, oh, wait, what do I want? What do I have? What do I need? And it's sort of that. Like if someone says, oh man, this song would have been great for that, you kind of don't know the brief. And so a lot of the work is the prep work of having the song. So a creative director comes at you, and you don't need one song. You need 10 to 20 songs that hit a brief. So start making the playlist now. And then so many resumes I got before hiring I had an intern. She's awesome and badass. And now I've hired her, is like having, like, how do I know you're good at music? Everyone says I like music, but so many people didn't include that in their resumes or whatever. It's just words. It's like, well, if you want to be in music, you have to show you have taste. So have playlists. When I was starting, it was a blog. That's not really a thing anymore. So like, we're going to check. So some people sent me to LinkedIn. And so I think I want to work with a human. I'm not some like finance. So I'd say start cataloging all your favorite songs. And then music supervisors are largely behind the curtains. It's this blood, sweat, and tears of war stories. And we're kind of in the shadows, I think, often. So DM. It doesn't hurt to DM. Hey, I love this thing. It's like just like any cold emailing. I love the Tim Ferriss thing of like, hey, I love this thing you did. I'm X. I'd love to learn about how you do. Can I buy you coffee? That's it. Here's a playlist of music I like that I think you might like. If you're a composer, here's 3 songs or there. And there's a lot of books. If you want to really get into the nitty gritty of how to do the licensing, I have Donald Passman's music book. I know there's like a bunch of books. So I think now it is a bit easier. And if it's like young kids, who's a director, who's that's making a film, just start doing it. Or TikTok and Instagram. Like you can just start doing it yourself. Go into Logic, Ableton, and start editing music to picture. But I think, learn it, study it, and then like start just, doing it. You don't have to wait.
Perfect, man. Thank you. Theme music for Gig with Mike Redman was composed and produced by Other Animal. Thank you for joining me today for another episode of Gig with Mike Redman. If you like what you heard, I'd ask that you subscribe and like us. And finally, if you have questions about a job or ideas for an episode, contact me at gigwithmikeredman@gmail.com. Until next time, I'm Mike Redman, signing off.